program. I'm Saad in Bromley in southeast London, and with me is Gregory. Gregory, you're there?
Yes, it's okay here in Brussels.
Welcome, welcome. Here it is overcast. It was about 14 degrees, I think, the temperature. And not as windy as we've had in the last few days, in the last week. So, how is it in Brussels, Gregory?
Well, it's still very cold, though it's bright.
Oh, it's bright. Okay, but it's cold. Yes, I feel the cold as well. Even though it's been 14 degrees, it's still a bit cold. So, welcome, listeners. As I said, this is the spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrushin. And we have a new topic every week. The topic for discussion tonight is everything must become new. Everything must become new. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 07939 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And I just want to say this Sunday that just gone past, it was Mother's Day in UK. And so I want to wish a happy belated Mother's Day to all mothers. And through them we receive blessings, and may they be blessed as well. So happy Mother's Day to all mothers. I know it's a bit late, but it was on Sunday, so I just want to say that to remember that. Gregory, I think there's a bit of background sound going on. If you can go on mute there. Okay, so I want to begin with, what is the Grail Message? The Grail. Hello? Yes? Everything okay? Yes, we are ready. Yeah, we started already. We started. Oh, what's happening? Sorry, Gregory, can you hear me? Okay, I think there was a little moment there. I'm not quite sure it was repeating what I just when you started the show. So apologies for that, listeners. So we are back live. I'm not quite sure what happened there. It was sort of repeating what I was saying. So apologies for that repetition. So yes, I'm going to begin with, what is the Grail Message? The Grail Message in the Light of Truth by Abdrushin is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life, for through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail Message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized, and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail Message, Shin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail Message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail Message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. Dear listeners, just to remind you, the topic we're discussing tonight is everything must become new. Everything must become new. And you're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Just want to say a bit about this topic we have chosen tonight, which is everything must become new. Some people might be wondering, where is that coming from? So in the Bible, there's a couple of references, and which is talking, let's say, from Jesus' sayings. And so the words are not exactly those words, everything must become new, but that's basically what you can infer from them. So I'm just going to read one of the quotes from the Bible, and that is in 2 Corinthians in the New Testament, chapter 5, verse 17. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. All things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. So I'm going to read that again. And it might seem out of context when I read this out, but I'm going to just repeat that for now. And I think I will just read a little bit from the Bible just to give that context where it's coming from. So this is the 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17. And it says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. All things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. So I'm just going to go into that chapter of Corinthians let me just find it here, just to give a bit of context. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this is just in the King James's version, and it's saying it is in chapter 5, as I say, of the 2 Corinthians, and verse 11. It starts with friendship with God through Christ. That's how it's titled. But I'm not going to read the whole thing from here. I'm going to just read from verse 16. No longer then do we judge anyone by human standards. Even if at one time we judged Christ according to human standards, we no longer do so. When anyone is joined to Christ, he is a new being. The old is gone, and the new has come. All this is done by God, who through Christ changed us from enemies into his friends, and gave us the task of making others his friends also. I'm going to just stop there. Gregory, actually the quote I read originally is just slightly different. So I'm just going to just remind the listeners that the main quote, what we're talking, the topic tonight is everything must become new. And the main quote, I just want to refer back to that. It is, I'm just going to read from here. When anyone is joined to Christ, he is a new being. And I know I read earlier a new creation. So I'm just going to say a new being. The old is gone, the new has come. So, and Gregory, I just want to go step by step through these words, because it's quite a lot that is, although the words are only a few, there's so much in these words. And, we want to understand them properly. So, first thing I want to ask Gregory, this saying that we have called the topic everything must become new in a simple way. First of all, is that referring to people who are Christian? Let's start with that.
Strictly speaking, it refers to all human spirits, all personalities who have been permitted to experience here on earth, and thereafter, when they depart, hopefully they could find their way back to their origin as self-conscious human spirits. So those words or those expressions apply to those who really fulfill.
Thank you for what you've said there, Gregory, but somehow it doesn't seem to align with this, what is in the Bible that I've just read out from this Corinthians chapter. So, because there's in here, it is referring to when anyone is joined to Christ. So is that, can I say, a contradiction, or is there something, is it inconsistent with what you have just said when someone is joined to Christ? Because you have referred to all human spirits who have come into existence. But here it's referring to people who have, anyone who is joined to Christ. And so it's almost like like I said, it have to be a Christian. So can you just sort of explain that?
It is preposterous to consider or to even think that only those who call themselves Christians are permitted to ascend to the highest heights. From what you read, it says, if everyone is joined to Christ. Now, it is assumed that because people have said it, therefore it is. That is not the case. Much work needs to be done by the individual to purify themselves, to cleanse themselves, to be able to be joined to Christ. So there is no contradiction. What had happened is that people did not take the effort to understand it in the right way.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Gregory. And, because when we look at the topic that we've chosen, which is everything must become new, it's so clear in those words, everything must become new. And of course, we're talking about in everything, include basically referring to human beings. So everything about human beings must become new, which is just very straightforward. And when it's, but we also, because it's, let's say, reference to from the Bible, we wanted to connect with it as well. So what I want to say next then, you mentioned all human beings have come into existence, and who have come into existence. So just going back to this reference in the Bible, I'll just repeat it. It says, when anyone is joined to Christ, he is a new being. He is a new being. The old is gone and the new has come. So it's like a process. Everything must become new. It's like a process. So first, Gregory, let's look at that. When something must become new, everything must become new. It means that, and the old has to be gone. So what is the old that has to be gone? What are we talking about? Because we are human and we have our faults and we have our abilities. So what is it that is old, that has to be disposed of or removed? What is it that has to go?
In your question lies the answer. Those faults which keep repeating themselves, which therefore prevents the personality to unite with the teachings of Christ. Those are the faults which have to go.
Gregory, I slightly got distracted. Can you just repeat that about how the faults have to go? Can you just say it again?
In your question, you referred to matters as we have our faults.
Yes.
We are human beings. Quite rightly so. And then you asked, what is it that have to go? And the response was that those basic faults, which you yourself just mentioned, those are the ones which have to go, because those faults keep being repeated again and again. And because those faults remain, it becomes very difficult for many to be united with the sense which Christ has brought.
Right. So now, again, I know we're going to broaden it further as we go in our discussion. So one of the things people think when Christ came, that he removed the sins of man and took the sins upon himself. And, you said, we talked about just now about faults. So let's say those sins, the faults are the sin. And so does that mean with Christ coming that we had the opportunity to, either he took away our faults or he gave us the opportunity to take away our faults, and then we could, yes, through his help. I find it hard to say it because I can't quite imagine it, that we can lose all our faults. So Greg, just before I go into that question further, is it possible to remove all these faults? Is it actually, because it seems too much of a miracle, like a perfection, is expecting us to become somehow perfect. So is it actually really possible to remove our faults, all our faults?
Each personality must work on himself or herself and cleanse itself. Only then, when it has attained the right attitude, when it works itself to the extent that all of its faults are eliminated, only then can it say it's prepared to walk in the direction that Christ has shown. For as long as there's one fault, the likelihood is that it will keep going round in circles. And that being the case, is unable to rise.
Now, thank you for that answer, Gregory. I just want to go further from what you've said there. What you said is like man has to, or human beings have to work on themselves to remove their faults. But many, you could say, who come from the Christian background seem to think that Christ was the one who took away man's sins or faults and took it on himself. And so by taking his, accepting him as the savior, that's how they can remove all their faults. This is how they interpret it. So, but you are saying that man has to do it himself. So again, that seems to be different from how the Christians seem to understand that.
One has to be careful when that word Christian is mentioned, because it has become an expression for self-delusion. Self-delusion in the sense that they have not considered the words of Christ very carefully. That each personality must strive to wash their clothes clean. Christ cannot come, first show the way, and then undertake the cleansing of each garment. He pointed the way, which leads to the forgiveness of sins. One must be brave enough to follow that way. Therefore, Christ could not at all fulfill that which is not in accordance with the will of his Father. What he could do was to point out the way, a pointer that if you follow that path, you will arrive as a self-conscious human spirit in the kingdom of heaven, that is in paradise. If, however, you do not follow the path he has pointed out, you will not get there. Therefore, only those who follow the path will get there. To follow the path means to walk on oneself in accordance with the dictate that he has put forward. These dictates are in accordance with the will of the Almighty, which has been expressed as laws of creation or laws of nature.
Again, thank you for your answer, Gregory. You've covered a lot in that answer, and I will go through that, what you've said. But before I do that, there's something else I want to ask you about, and that is this saying, everything must become new, or the way we put it in this way, everything must become new. We know it refers to human beings and their faults, how they must be overcome. Now, there's a word there, Gregory, called must. Everything must become new. Now, one thing we know about human beings is that they do have free will. So that's how you can choose to do good, or you can choose to do bad, or whatever you do, whatever you choose to do. So there is that thing. But in this, we said the old has to become new. Everything must become new, and the old is the faults. All the faults have to go. So what I want to understand, Gregory, when you have human beings which have free will, how can they must be forced to have, if I use that word, if that they do not voluntarily, let me put it that way, if they do not voluntarily overcome their faults, how can it be that that the faults must be removed? Are they forced to do it?
When Christ came, he showed the path that man must follow if they wish to arrive in paradise as self-conscious human spirits. Therefore, whoever wishes to get there must automatically, voluntarily follow the paths, which paths are in accordance with the laws of nature. If, however, they do not follow that path, then they will not arrive there. And because many deep within them wish to arrive in paradise, then they must strive to do away with their faults, their personal faults. And that is a demand and a challenge. It's a matter of free will to choose whether they intend to fulfill that which will lead them to their longed-for heights. A simple example is that if one wishes to get from one place to another, a path may be shown from their source to their destination. If, however, they refuse to take that path leading to the destination, they may well, in accordance with their free will, remain in the same place. As soon as they wish to make improvement to get to the destination, then they must. So it's not a matter of maybe. If you wish to achieve the peace and happiness of paradise, then these are the conditions. Means you have to fulfill the conditions. If not, you might choose to remain in the same place. That already shows that man is granted the free will to choose to be or not to be. That always lies in the free will of man.
So from what I understand, what you've said there, Gregory, is still a free will to choose to do something, in this case to go to paradise, and if you choose to do that, there are certain things you have to fulfill, and which is a must. So that I can understand. But what I wanted to be just clarify just a little bit again. So then, if somebody is not voluntarily or with their free will not wishing to, let's say, go to paradise, does that mean, are they still, my question, let me just clarify that. So yes, if somebody is not having that, let's say, strong desire with their free will to reach paradise, or just does not wish to, let me just put it that way, does not wish to, they will not be forced to fulfill what it needs to be fulfilled. Is that right?
Correct. If no one or someone does not have the wish to get to paradise consciously as a self-conscious human spirit, they will not be compelled. However, it must be known that where we are here on earth belongs to the world of matter. And the world of matter is temporal. It means it's more of a training ground where crops are planted, they grow, they mature, and after some time, there's a repetition. It means, therefore, because the world of matter is temporal, the time will come when it is high time for the human personality to have left the world of matter, either voluntarily as a self-conscious human spirit, or it remains in the world of matter because it's unable to make progress homewards. The world of matter has to undergo disintegration because it is temporal. It therefore means that whoever has not made enough effort to sever itself, it's a self-conscious human spirit, to move towards paradise, will also undergo the torments that will then be there in the world of matter. And of course, the torments will be so much that the measure of consciousness it has acquired will also disintegrate. Therefore, man has free will to force itself on a voluntary basis to understand which laws will assist it to go back home as a self-conscious human spirit, or refuse, remain in the world of matter, which has to undergo disintegration. And with that, it, the human spirit, will revert back to the original state of the lack of consciousness, to go back as someone with no identity.
Thank you for your answer, Gregory. It's quite, how can I say, I don't know exactly the words to use for it, but it's like quite a severe consequence when somebody doesn't strive, you could say, to reach paradise or try to become conscious and mature human being. There's some severe consequences for that. Before I go further about that, I just want to remind listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. This is the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrushin. And if you are interested in getting information on the Grail Message or get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is everything must become new. Everything must become new. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And just to remind you, we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1.com. That's Bless Radio, the number 1.com. Also on YouTube, go to youtube.com, and then in the search box type in Bless Radio 1. Again, the number 1, Bless Radio 1, space live stream. And then after the show, the next day, you can hear the recording of this show. Again, go to YouTube, and in the search box type Bless Radio 1, the number 1, then space, Grail Message, and then the topic of the show, which is tonight, everything must become new. Now, Gregory, from your last answer, there were so many things you said there, and I just want to go through them. Yes, we are living on a physical world, the earth, experiencing life, and we also know that life is actually meant to be a spiritual life, and the ultimate goal, hopefully those who have been listening to this show for some time would know, that is to reach paradise, let's say the spiritual world, let's call it like that, which is in heaven, not on the earth, not in the physical world. So that's the journey that we are meant to be on. And as we pointed out, we do have our free will. We can voluntarily go that way. Or if we do that, we still, to reach paradise, we have to fulfill certain things to reach there. And of course, if we don't want to, we can still do that as well. But then there are consequences. There's always consequences for whatever we do, whatever decision we make. There's always consequences. But the thing to note is that being on this earth, we are more, let's say, conscious or aware of the earthly things, maybe not so conscious of the non-earthly or the spiritual things, which is, and the big point you made, Gregory, is the earthly things are temporary, you could say, and these spiritual things are eternal. So that's a massive difference, which maybe people are not thinking about when they, consider these things. And so when we talk about, Gregory, everything must become new, I know we talked about our faults. The idea is to basically overcome or remove our faults, which sounds, well, it can be some faults in the earthly as well, Gregory. So, I mean, obviously we do, let's say, do earthly activities, and we can, I'm just trying to frame this question really. So when we talk about, Gregory, everything must become new, is that really referring only in a spiritual sense, or is there an earthly aspect of it as well?
When the expression is used, everything must become new, first and foremost, it refers to that which is permanent in man, which is the core. It is the inner core that is really alive. All else are clothing. Even the physical body is only a tool, temporary tool. Therefore, those expressions must be applied to, first and foremost, the inner personality, which is of spirit. Once the expressions have been well assimilated, the spirit will adjust itself, which will now have an impact on the physical body. And when it has an impact on the physical body, on the frontal brain, man will, that we see externally, will then adjust itself. Therefore, it also implies the adjustment in physical things in such a way that it will be of benefit to the inner man and the man we see in flesh and blood.
Thank you for that answer, Gregory. You gave a very sort of clear picture there, how we should look at it. Thank you for that. Now, there's something, Gregory, we're talking about basically removing our faults or overcoming our faults. This is what we've been talking about. So now there's a word we hear called transformation, which is, and I will just look in the pick up the meaning in dictionary here. It says a marked change in form, nature, or appearance. And I don't think I must admit I like that. Really, it's not really they could say the words we are using in our discussion tonight. I will say it's not quite appropriate to what I would like to use the word transformation, if I'm honest. Okay, I'm going to give my own answer to it, Gregory, my own definition of transformation. So for me, Gregory, transformation would represent that it would be a change in our ways, in our attitude, in a way basically to improve ourselves, to become better human beings. Would you say that that's a better sort of way to look at it?
Of course, it's a much better way, but one must add to it a change to improve oneself in accordance with the laws through which that person came into existence. These laws are the laws of creation, or when applied to the world of matter, one talks about the laws of nature. As long as that reference is considered, then that change is correct.
Thank you for that. Thank you for adding and clarifying that. So now, because why I brought that in, because this concept of transformation is like a new age type of concept, and yet it's also a spiritual, I mean, behind it is also a spiritual change and shift in how we are. So it's like a development, you can say. Now, and I believe every human being wants to better themselves. That's even on the earth. I know they want to better their earthly circumstances, but I think at the end of the day, we just want to be better human beings. But you've added to that actually that has to be in line with the laws, the natural laws. So maybe, Greg, we should look at that now, those natural laws. The natural laws, I mean, the word natural is such a, you can say it seems so obvious what is natural. But we know, Gregory, in our experience on this earth, we have, human beings have, let's say, yes, we've developed many in technology terms, we have developed quite a lot, and yet we've also quite a lot devastated this planet in terms of environment and so on, and that's like nature, and lots of animals and, well, vegetation has suffered through the activity of man, which shows that we have not been working in harmony with nature. So what I want to ask, and Gregory, you've been talking about that we should be aligning, if I use that word, with the laws of nature. So how do we get to know these laws of nature, Gregory?
In the first instance, it looks impossible. But at the same time, if one realizes that ever before human personalities stepped on it, the earth has always been there. Also, the world of matter has always been there. There must have been rules. Which rules were in place in the establishment of the world of matter, of the earth in particular. And these rules also help in the upbuilding. Therefore, one must realize there is always an underlying structure, an underlying pattern, which is always present. The simple example one may give is for biological beings, we have that there's the need for exchange. For instance, breathing in and breathing out. Also in the intake of foods and also waste elimination. That cycle has always been there. So it doesn't have to be, in quotes, rocket science to be able to recognize it. What is stressed here is that pattern, that law, which never changes, that of reciprocity or reciprocal action. So the law of reciprocal action always existed. What many have not considered is to look at different areas or examine different platforms. And if they are to do that, they will always find that that law is ubiquitous, always there. The other one, which one must discuss, is that of homogeneity. Very, very clearly, one or many would have observed that for things to happen in accordance, for structures to be built, there must be homogeneity. People of homogeneous ideas need to come together. Therefore, you will find in nature the way things have been structured. We have people, or in nature, we have occurrences of similar types by homogeneous species. One is referring to types, similar types, equivalent types. They must come together. It is these equivalent types that form structures. Otherwise, there will be no structures. A third law, which one may mention, is that of, in quotes, heaviness or gravitation. That which is heavy sinks, whereas that which is lighter floats. One can observe this when you go to the sea. One can observe this even within the air, where it is mentioned the air is heavy and therefore it has to sink and therefore you catch a cold. Whereas when it is hot, hot air rises. And it is this very simple law that causes, in hot season, water to evaporate, even from the seas, and as it rises, it cools down, falls down again. So the seasons, the movements we have, all these are a consequence of these very simple laws one has just mentioned. A better understanding can be found in the work, in the light of truth, the Grail Message. There, the different aspects, how all this brought about creation, brought about nature, brought about man, there all will be found.
Thank you for that answer there, Gregory. You really made it explain very clearly, and in simply how we can observe and appreciate the laws in nature, and really they're not, let's say, in a way it's quite straightforward to work with them once you're aware of them. And I would say the main thing is people maybe do not consider them the laws so, let's say, all empowering that they must be followed or obeyed, because we have this free will and we do what we think, whatever we think, and think we are the master somehow. And so it's what we, however we want to do, that's fine. But then we forget that we are living in a framework. There is, like you mentioned, these laws existed before we did. This creation that was formed before we were. So it's like when you are saying becoming a master of something, what are you becoming a master of if you are not able to realize that something was already there before you came? So thank you for bringing that out. I've received a text from a listener. I think they're just making a comment on what you've just said there, Gregory, about the laws. Let me just read that out. It says, the man who adjusts himself seems like an alien to this mankind on earth, for who truly lives by these laws. So I'll just repeat that. The man who adjusts himself must seem like an alien to this mankind on earth, for who truly lives by these laws. And Gregory, there's a word there, adjust, which is like adapt. So we have to, what I would say, Gregory, the key word is, in what you've been saying here, is we need to adapt or adjust to these laws. Would you agree?
Completely so.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Now, just want to continue about the transformation. That was the word we started looking at, and so we've talked about our you could say attitude and overcoming our faults, and then we've talked about these natural laws that we have to first be aware of and then obviously adapt to them. So obviously science is doing that in a sense, in one way. Then we've talked about our faults, which is really, you could say, not really something to do with science. It's more with our spiritual sort of attitude, how we are. So Gregory, is there something, I mean, yes, the laws exist, and we have been given these teachings, let's say spiritual teachings, or you could say religious teachings as well, over a long period, thousands and thousands of years, by different teachers coming. So do we need that extra help, Gregory, in guidance to follow this path to adapt to these natural laws? So is that, because when you talk about the natural laws, it looks like almost something you could say, don't want to say earthly, but it's like you're never sure if it's affecting every part of your life or it's affecting a certain aspect of your life. So I just want to get that. So do we need, Gregory, there are the laws, we can become aware of the laws and adapt to them, but what about all the spiritual guidance or religious teachings? What about that? Is that not supposed to play a role as well? Do we not need that as well?
All the spiritual teachings tried, or when viewed correctly, strive to explain their perspective of these laws themselves. So you will find in some religious teachings, they have understood a bit, or they have observed a bit, and therefore they hold on to that. It is the same with so-called other religious teachings. However, it is not supposed to be a rigid form, but a flexible form. It's quite simple to know that when you go to school, first, You need to understand the language which is spoken in school. They don't bring the advanced one. You first have to learn, in quotes, the alphabets, and then how to join the alphabets, how to form better sentences. Gradually, you build up. You find that the so-called religious teachings were at different stages of maturity, and their perception had to be improved from time to time. Therefore, help was always needed, depending on the maturity that a particular peoples have attained. You wouldn't say because you have done so much in your primary school, you don't need to advance to beyond the primary school or beyond your kindergarten. There is continuous improvement in creation. That never stops. Even when the personality has arrived home in paradise, there is continuity in improvement. Therefore, once you realize that at that time, teachings were granted to a people to help them to mature from one stage to the other, that in itself is a change which balances what the maturity is at that time and what could be achieved. More could not be given at that time because humanity would not even understand it.
Thank you for that, Gregory. So looks like there's a journey to, let's say, in our spiritual development and growth. Like you say, you go to school and you learn your ABC, and then you can make words, and then you make sentences, and then you can write stories, and you're growing. So it's continuous, like you say, continuously growing, maturing, and understanding life, you can say, and everything is like a learning, and so it all makes sense, very clear, and in a way, the spiritual, just like going to school, spiritual life is also the same way, learning and growing. So, and then the laws, we've talked about the natural laws. That is also, we need to come to realize what they are, appreciate them, and grow into, finding what they are and how they work. So it's all, you could say, part of life, growing. And it's all like aligned, but somehow we get to, somehow through, let's say, indoctrination or whatever it is, our background brought up, whatever it is, we're somehow think in a particular way and separate this into one part and another one into another part, and then you cannot see this big picture, that what is actually this world actually is. So thank you for bringing that out. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abrushin. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is everything must become new. Everything must become new. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 07939 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 00447939641958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1. That's the number one. Bless Radio 1, the number one.com. Also on YouTube, go to youtube.com and then type in the search box Bless Radio 1, number one again, Bless Radio 1, space live stream. That's the live show. And if you are, and after the show, the next day you can listen to the recording of this show. And you go to YouTube and then type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number one, then put in after that space Grail Message, and then space the topic of the show, which is tonight, everything must become new. And you can see our previous shows as well. Here, listen to our previous shows as well. Now, Gregory, I'm going to read, because this, again, from the Bible now. It is from John chapter 3, verse 3. That's the quote I'm going to have, but I'm going to read actually the whole of that chapter actually, because it gives the whole, again, a context. Maybe not the whole chapter, but more, quite a section of the chapter. So this is a quote from the Bible, John chapter 3, verse 3, and it says, Jesus answered, I'm telling you the truth. No one can see the kingdom of God unless he is born again. Actually, that's what it says in this version of the Bible. There are quite a few different translations, and in another let's say translation, I found this for the same point there. John chapter 3, verse 3. There it says, Jesus answered him, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. So, first question, Gregory, on that. Yes, I'm going to not read the whole thing right now. I just, I'm just thinking about this, Gregory. Apologies for, I'm just hesitating a little bit. Let me just go and read what it says in this section of the Bible here first to give the background. I think it could give us, it might confuse us. It also will give us the context. So I'm just going to read it. I think just to give a little bit of context. So this is, I'm reading now chapter 3, John chapter 3. Jesus and Nicodemus, it's titled. There was a Jewish leader named Nicodemus, who belonged to the party of the Pharisees. One night he went to Jesus and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher sent by God. No one could perform the miracles you are doing unless God were with him. Jesus answered, I'm telling you the truth. No one can see the kingdom of God unless he is born again. How can a grown man be born again? Nicodemus asked. He certainly cannot enter his mother's womb and be born a second time. I'm telling you the truth, replied Jesus. No one can enter the kingdom of God unless he is born of water and the Spirit. A person is born physically of human parents, but he is born spiritually of the Spirit. Do not be surprised, because I tell you that you must all be born again. The wind blows wherever it wishes. You hear the sound it makes, but you do not know where it comes from and where it is going. It is like that with everyone who is born of the Spirit. I'm just going to stop there, Gregory. So just that was to give a bit of picture or context of. So the saying I want to repeat, Gregory, is Jesus said, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. So, Gregory, what does it mean about being, before I go there, first of all, is this being born again, is that got anything to do with everything must become new? Is there any connection there?
Correct. It has the strongest connection. Being born again only or is equivalent to being born anew. Therefore, for human spirit, everything must become new.
Right. So, okay, so that's good. So now we know we're talking on the same topic here. So the next question is, when Jesus said, you must be born again. And as you could see, Nicodemus didn't really understand Jesus there. He was taking it very literally, which he already knew doesn't make sense. And then Jesus answered him. So can you just, Gregory, tell us this, what does it mean to be born again?
Friends, that's a great question, which many should contemplate on. When Nicodemus came, Nicodemus must have been someone who had studied the scriptures. Yet, at the first meeting, he expressed his little understanding. Seeing miracles, he already concluded that we know that you are so and so. Yet, he kept asking such questions. But let's go back to what it means to be born again, or what it means to be born anew. The equivalent of that expression is to watch and to pray. Watching in the sense of alertness. Alertness in spirit, alertness in body. That is the watchfulness which is expected, perpetual watchfulness which is expected of the human spirit. Coupled with praying. To pray does not mean to kneel down and beg. To pray means to make use of the power which assail the human spirit. Whoever opens itself to that power and to make use of that power in accordance with the will of the Maker, with the will of him who grants that power. That is watching and praying. That is what has not been done in the past. So, as long as the human spirit remains in a perpetual state of watchfulness and making use of the power which has been granted to him in accordance with the will of his Creator, then the human personality is born again, is born anew.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Sometimes you can say when things are expressed in a spiritual language, although they might be simple, but they're not easily grasped by, let's say, many. And then when, let's say, you have explained it in other words, I'm not able to say how to say it exactly, but let's say expressed it, I don't want to say more clearly, but just expanded it maybe to more, let's say, earthly understanding, if I can put it like this. It's like the picture becomes much clearer in a way. It's like We are not able somehow, Gregory, to get the spiritual words immediately as they are said. It's like we have to work to get it sort of to where we are. It's like the spiritual language is somewhere up there in heaven, and then we are on this earth, and we try to understand the spiritual concept, but we need it said expressed in a way which we are like in an earthly way, if I can say it this way. So sometimes it looks like that's what we are missing when these words are explained, and no wonder you can imagine with all these different teachings out there, spiritual teachings, when they're given in this spiritual language, and we humans on this earth try to understand them, it's like we just get lost. It's not really, things are not really clear. Maybe, as I said, not everybody, but many. So it's quite, seems quite a hard work, Gregory, to, if we can look at that, Gregory, what is it that we need, Gregory, to absorb and to appreciate and to really understand these spiritual words? It seems I mean, just look at this Nicodemus. He's supposed to be a learned man. He's supposed to understand these things, but he's struggling. He's struggling so much. So how can the ordinary man, as such, can handle these things? Can appreciate these things?
It's surprising that, such questions will even arise. For when one examines these things very carefully, on the one hand, you'll find that the people in the arts say these words or these expressions. For instance, the words that Shakespeare used were used a long time ago, and yet these plays in the arts are still being appreciated again and again. It only means that the same words, depending on the inner maturity of the personality, that is where the personality now appreciates. So the arts, which is closer to that which is spiritual, these expressions remain, but we grow in appreciation. There are some who do not wish to grow in appreciation. When the expression is used, the ordinary man, each personality is unique. How one person understands some things is different from the other. However, the goal must be the same, which goal is to strive for continuous improvement. Continuous improvement by eliminating the errors which have been brought in by men themselves. Once those errors have been eliminated, then becomes easier. There are some who find it very difficult to eliminate these errors because they have formed a structure. Structures like Christ came and died, or Christ came and was killed such that we ourselves will be free. These are wrong. These are errors which have been introduced. And such errors make it almost impossible for those who wish to improve themselves. So the challenge has always been expressions which have been passed on to man, yet they have not made any effort to understand it correctly. Because they didn't make that effort, they have no personal conviction So whatever expression is passed on to us, such expressions in the arts or in the sciences, whatever it may be, must be subjected to continuous examination, continuous weighing. Only through such a process can errors be eliminated. So it requires some work, not just some work, but real work. Not work on others, but work on ourselves in rejecting that which is not in accordance with the deeper meaning or the sensing which accosts us on a daily basis.
Thank you again, Gregory, for that explanation. Now, you know, this transformation or overcoming our faults, let's say, our faults, is a process. Now, maybe I should, So I want to ask now, Gregory, when we have, in quotes, become new, you know, with the faults have been removed or overcome, does it mean that we will not, we will stay that way, like permanently? That's a permanent shift from with being free of faults, and then can continue basically. Let's say I was going to use the word safe. Maybe I will use the word safe, and we can now safely go forward into heaven, into paradise. Is that? Can we do that? That actually become completely fault-free and like forever?
In the discussion, it was stressed perpetual. So it is not today everything is okay, tomorrow errors, the following day maybe or maybe not. That is the state in which humanity have precipitated themselves. Perpetual examination, perpetual weighing, only with such can there be personal improvement. Can one come to, say, to school, today you are in kindergarten, and then you make some improvement, now you are in the secondary, and then you fall back to kindergarten, and that will not be progress. And that is the state in which mankind is right now. Perpetual progress only means a perpetual change of state. Change of state means like a pointer. You were here. Tomorrow, there have been improvements. You have risen higher. Gradually, you keep moving on. There is no standstill. It is when there is a standstill that you have confusion. Consider very carefully the world of matter that comes into existence and is there for a long time. At the same time, it is temporary. It means there will come a time when we have a dissolution. Therefore, if one remains in the same place, improvements and then falling back, that will not be good for it. Because there comes a time when the dissolution takes place, and if one is there, one is swept along. Therefore, that cannot be the will of the Almighty that granted the opportunity to human spirits to come to this area to experience such they can go back home as self-conscious human spirits. So there must be continuous refinement. That is what it means to be born anew. To be born anew doesn't mean to jump one leg in the new and the other in the old. It has to be a continuous process. If your understanding, your awareness today is less than what your awareness will be tomorrow, then there is improvement. If, on the other hand, your awareness today or your self-awareness today is the same self-awareness tomorrow, then there's no improvement. How can such a spirit now say is born anew when there is no inner change? So being born again or being born anew only means there is continuous improvement that leads one home to paradise, a place where one has continuous improvement without stopping.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that answer, Gregory. I'm just trying to, you said continuous improvement, perpetual sort of watching, examining and weighing and examining. And I'm just wondering, we've talked about spiritual guidance and being aware of the laws of nature. This is part of our journey. So, and obviously, what I'm saying, Gregory, is what it means is you go to, let's say you go to school, you go to kindergarten, and then, go to the infants and so on. It's like, as I say, one step at a time, one class at a time, then you go forward. And the idea is not to fall backwards to the previous class. It should be going progressively forward. So that all makes sense, one step at a time. Now, what I want to ask Gregory is, at school you have teachers, and of course you have parents at home or guardians looking after us from children to help us to grow. So is there always such helpers, Gregory, even as we move into adult life, like this? Always there's some support, if I can use that word, there to, you could say, hold our hand, even as we grow older and mature. Is it constantly there's some such support? And if it's so, first of all, is there such support?
There has always been continuous support. However, one has to be aware the way creation speaks to it, that support is always there. And that means one has to be on the alert, that alertness, to realize that what has approached you, consciously or unconsciously, is help. If one is not aware, if one is not alert, if one is not intuitive, how would you then know that what has approached you is help when immediately you reject it once it comes in? The manifestations which is being discussed here is that of perpetual. That means you don't, a simple example, you don't learn a language which language is necessary to make progress in a domain. And then you say, okay, fair enough. Because of the lack of use of that language, You forget the language. Will that be progress? How would you then function in that domain? The same thing happens in nature, in creation. Each personality must learn the language that creation speaks to it. This calls for continuous watchfulness because many things manifest. You yourself must weigh, must examine. In that state, you can now take what you have weighed and examined and then make use of it in your own particular way and pass it on to others who are less able to understand. That is the task that each human's personality has to fulfill. So if they refuse to do that, an example, if you learn a language and then you throw it away, then how can you make progress? It means you are unable to communicate, which communication only means structured forms, very well structured. Man has to be intuitive. Man has to be alert to be able to survive the challenges. Of course, at the initial level, it is very challenging. But before too long, it becomes like someone who learns to play music. The first few notes are challenging. But before too long, it becomes used to it and knows how to keep its head above waters.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Uprushin. And if you're interested in getting information on the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we are discussing tonight is everything must become new. Everything must become new. You can join in the discussion with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 07939 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, the number 1, blessradio1.com. Also on YouTube, go to youtube.com and then type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1, Bless Radio 1, and then space live stream. That's one word. Live. So Bless Radio 1 with space, then live stream. And if after the show, the next day, you can hear the recording of the show. Again, you go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, number 1, Bless Radio 1, and then type space Grail Message, Grail Message, MESSAGE, and then the topic of the show, which tonight is everything must become new. And you can also listen to our other previous shows. Now, Gregory, There's another reading. I will just find it first. It's again from the Bible. I want to just go there first. Let me find it. It's Romans chapter 6. Just looking for it just to make sure I get there first. Romans chapter 6, verse 4 in the Bible. And let me just make sure I've got it ready here. It's sort of, I've said something similar earlier at the beginning of the show, but I just want to refer to this as well. And yes, so here I will read what is in the Bible I've got here. Is it's, as I say, Romans chapter 6, verse 4. By our baptism, then we were buried with him and shared his death, in order that just as Christ was raised from death by the glorious power of the Father, so also we might live a new life. And I'm just going to read the background, a little bit more from this chapter 6 of Romans, and it's titled "Dead to Sin, but Alive in Union with Christ." Dead to sin, but alive in union with Christ. What shall we say then? Should we continue to live in sin so that God's grace will increase? Certainly not. We have died to sin. How then can we go on living in it? For surely you know that when we were baptized into union with Christ Jesus, we were baptized into union with his death. By our baptism, then, we were buried with him and shared his death, in order that just as Christ was raised from death by the glorious power of the Father, so also we might live a new life. I'm just going to stop there, Gregory, because there's so much being said in here, and I think if we lose the track of it, if we try to continue to read further. So there's Gregory, there's talk about death and sin. There's a talk about baptism, which is uniting with Christ, in union with Christ, and then let's say, and then there's the thing that since Jesus was raised from the death through the power of God, there's a new life. So there's so many things being pointed out or said over here. So I think we go one step at a time, one topic, one aspect at a time. So let's start with sin. So Gregory, it looks like if we stay in sin, there's a likelihood of death, or the prospect is death. So can you just give a picture of that, Gregory? What is it? Because the death, we know everybody dies. So I don't think that is what is being referred to here.
What has been seen from its inception is the wrongdoing of the lack of use of one's intuitive perception. Because of this lack of use, you now have the scenario of the frontal brain, which is the seat of the intellect, being overdeveloped. So sin is only a result of the excessive use and development of the frontal brain, without taking into consideration the intuition which refreshes man, which has its connection to the home, the spiritual home of man. If that intuition is not utilized or is not even listened to, then the likelihood is there that man will only use the frontal brain in its activity. is similar to what the expression is, beauty and the beast. The beast, which is the frontal brain, is supposed to execute the strong impressions of beauty. If, however, the beast is not controlled because it does not listen to beauty, which bring balance, then what you have is destruction, war, and suffering. That itself is sin. So to eliminate sin, man must remain awake in his intuitions, and at the same time make use of what one's intuition has brought forward for maturity.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I can, you can see that what do I want to say here? It's like every word, that we're reading, let's say in the Bible or any spiritual teaching, you've already said we must examine, and weigh and examine, but it's like you need really almost the understanding before to comprehend what these words mean. Otherwise, you will certainly get lost, because just without that sort of framework or foundation, it's like it's never you're going to find the answer. It's like it's like a very, very let's say tough to do that. So so thank you for bringing that sort of clarification. And yes, you mentioned about the intellect and the intuition there, or the frontal brain, which is where the intellect, let's say, is active, and the overuse of this intellect, you could say, at the expense of the intuition, is preventing us to see these, let's say, when we look at these words or anything, in fact, dealing with any situation, in fact, that's what I think we probably should focus on just after we finish this question, that we need to see the world with the eyes appropriate to that field of activity that we are in. So because that's the earthly eyes within the earthly, and then the spiritual eyes for the spiritual, but in that context of seeing the big picture the whole time, and not what is immediately there, say, which is our usual thing, you could say, looking at things in the physical thing that we are so used to, but really allowing our spiritual eyes to open. So this is where I can see a lot of, you could say, mistakes or potential faults are going to arise, misinterpretations, you could say, are going to arise. So let me move on. There was another part here, Gregory, which I'll read here. For surely you know that when we were baptized into union with Christ Jesus, we were baptized into the union with his death. By our baptism, then, we were buried with him and shared his death, in order that just as Christ was raised from the death by the glorious power of the Father, so we might live a new life. Again, Gregory, could you explain those words?
One can already sense some inconsistency in these expressions. For when the word death is mentioned, many only consider that of the physical body. The physical body was born, and it does not live forever. So the physical body is only temporary, a tool adapted to the earth for one to experience the earthly circumstances. Before the physical body was born, the inner personality, which is the human spirit, has always been there. That spiritual personality has to understand gradually the language that creation, that nature speaks to it. And it does this in bits. It may incarnate here and thereafter, when the physical body has been used and worn out, the physical body is dropped, but the human soul continues to exist. The death which has been mentioned in what you read most likely refers to spiritual death. A union with Christ only means that the human spirit has come to that maturity where it is willing to drop its errors, to drop its faults. Only then can it do a union or a near union. Otherwise, that will never happen. For it to be able to live forever, it must drop the wrong impressions and it must purify itself from the sins before it becomes too late. Such purification is only possible in the world of matter, because the world of matter is temporal. So the death they are talking about is referring to those who refuse to purify themselves and remain in the world of matter, such that when disintegration comes, they will go with it. But for those who have united with the Spirit of Christ, who strive to go along that way, they will be pulled out through their activities and will not be there when the world of matter undergoes disintegration. A better understanding of this can be found in the work In the Light of Truth, the Grail Message. Again and again, clarity is provided. In order to bring many to this clarity, we have these weekly discussions just to touch a tip of the iceberg. The wealth it contains is immeasurable. So many are advised to go into this work, for it is spiritual. Then that bandage which has kept many away from understanding, that bandage will fall.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I've got a question from a listener. They're saying, hello, Saad. Tonight's program is very interesting. Please ask Gregory if all human beings are capable of this transformation. Obviously, we were talking about transformation earlier on. So please ask Gregory if all human beings are capable of this transformation, even if they have reached maturity. My experience has been that people rarely change, even though they want to. My mother used to say, a leopard will never change his spots. I believe it is very difficult to change one's inborn nature. Surely many traits, good and bad, are inherited and hard to change. Do you want me to read it again, Gregory? You want to read that again?
If you summarize it, because there are so many parts.
Yes, I'm sorry. So my experience has, sorry, let me just get a brief in myself. So, okay, so the person basically is asking how to change oneself, okay? So, and I'll just say it like this: the experience that this person has had, that people really change, even when they want to. And the example given, the mother used to say, "My leopard never changed his spots." It's very difficult to change one's inborn nature. Surely many traits, good and bad, are inherited and hard to change.
Again, that is a presumption. A presumption because the way things have been is such that people wish to see the difficult side. In the past, to get information across to people before the age of mobile phones, before the age of communications, is to employ town criers. These town criers went from one province to the other to shout and announce any news. As time went on, there was the events of the radio. Some people preferred not to listen to radio at that time because they didn't like it, because it was too difficult for them to change. Then came to the age where you have your mobile device and you can talk like we're doing, and to the extent you can even see the person you are talking to. Would one say it is too difficult to speak with a mobile device and see one's son or daughter or friend? And because it's a mobile device, it was not used in the past, it wasn't used maybe 20, 100 years ago, and therefore one will not adjust to the facilities which are present. It is inertia for many, the inability to adjust themselves. If many know that they need to understand the language which creation speaks to them, and this language will help them here or hereafter, then willingly they will examine everything. But many are filled with doubts. Doubts because they themselves wish it otherwise. Our parents spoke based on their level of maturity. So we can't say, oh, because our mother said this, our father said this, our grandparents said this, and therefore we follow it. But as you are well aware, the young ones of nowadays never follow all this advice that the parents give. So it's only an excuse to remain in the past. To examine and move forward is good for the human spirit, because those who lag behind are subject to changes, which changes can easily overcome them because they have refused to make use of the tools which have been presented to them in the times in which we live.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Just there's a bit about inherited things from parents. So what about those traits and which is hard to change because so there are things, let's say, in your own hands, and then there's other things which are like, in quotes, inherit. Well, it's there's the person is saying inherited. So you can't change that, can you?
What is inherited is that of the physical body. Some traits which are passed due to one's genes. However, when it comes to the soul, it's only a matter of the attraction of homogeneity. You had to be born from out of your parents because there must be something homogeneous in soul, in spirit, for a time, or somebody with a homogeneous trait. Spiritually, it's about the neighborhood that has a strong influence. That does not mean that one should remain on the same spot. Like it's said nowadays, you'll find that many a person, although they have inherited some challenges, but they don't remain there. How come that one's parent, who might have been a farmer, the children don't remain farmers? Why do they become doctors? Why do they become engineers? Why won't they say, oh, my father was a farmer and therefore I should remain a farmer? My father was a beggar and therefore I should remain a beggar. My father couldn't do this, couldn't play music, therefore I shouldn't play music. These are only self-excuses. For, as is said in many cases, he or she who dares wins.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I would like to read, we've come to the end of the show. I mean, we could go with one other question, but I don't want to do that now. I'd like to end with the show which we have been doing in quite a few shows now, with the reading from the Grail Message. And so I will do that. This is actually, I want to begin with something right at the front of the Grail Message. And Gregory, I think it'll be very helpful for the listeners, especially connected with tonight's show, being everything must become new. So it begins with, free yourself from all darkness. He who makes no effort to grasp the word of the Lord aright burdens himself with guilt. And then follows you could say the beginning of the Grail Message, which is, for your guidance. The bandage falls and belief becomes conviction. Liberation and redemption lie only in conviction. I am addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing to examine this matter objectively. Religious fanatics and irresponsible enthusiasts may hold aloof, for they are detrimental to the truth. As for the malevolent and prejudiced, they shall find their sentence in the very words. The message will strike only those who still carry within them a spark of truth and a yearning to be true human beings. To all such it will become the shining light and staff. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos of the present day confusion. The following word does not bring a new religion, but is intended as the torch to help all serious listeners or readers find the right path, which leads them to the longed for height. Only he who bestirs himself can advance spiritually. The fool who uses extraneous aids for this in the form of ready-made opinions of others only walks his path as if on crutches, while ignoring his own healthy limbs. But the moment he boldly uses all the abilities which lie dormant within him, awaiting his call to help in his ascent, he is employing the talent entrusted to him in accordance with his Creator's will, and will easily overcome all obstacles that seek to divert him. Therefore, awake. Genuine faith lies only in conviction, and conviction comes solely through an inflexible weighing and examining. See that you're truly alive in the wonderful creation of your God. Approaching. Gregory, would you like to say anything to the listeners to say goodbye?
Wishing them a beautiful week.
Thank you for that. Dear listeners, thank you for joining us tonight. Hope you enjoyed the show. I think it was a very brilliant topic. Everything must become new. It really makes you want to, understand what is that about? What is life about? What are we meant to, do in our lives? So it's just and it gives you like a inspiration to, yes, what do I want to do? Everything that must become new. What is it? So hopefully it was thought-provoking for you. And obviously we encourage you to go and pick up the Grail Message, examine it for yourself with your own eyes, and make of it what you will. All the best to everybody. I wish everybody a great week. God bless. Take care. We'll be back next week as usual, Tuesday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. with the new topic. All the best. Take care, everybody. God bless.